G6 Productions.
Okay. Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to the Committee on Education and Workforce Development. I want to say good afternoon to my colleagues, my staff, listening and viewing audience, all those who are tuning in today's hearing. I want to especially thank the central staff, media, security, facility management and staff, custodial management, journal, the Journal Division, Office Legal Counsel, for all their hard work and dedication preparing for today's hearing. I also want to thank the invited testifiers for their time and participation in today's hearing. During this important hearing today, we're going to introduce a crucial bill, chiefly sponsored by Senator Alma Francis Heyliger, and of which I've joined as a prime sponsor. This bill would end a form of discrimination that has been rampant throughout schools, workplaces worldwide, in the Virgin Islands, across the Caribbean, the U.S. mainland. And we continue to see on the news and on social media in which students are being denied an access to education due to their Afrocentric hairstyle. Our students should not be denied an education because of their hairstyle. As a person with locks, I know how it feels to be stereotyped based on my hair. What often makes this even more disturbing is that this form of discrimination is so frequently being perpetuated by African descendant people in societies where predominantly African descendant people reside. By end of this practice, through this legislation, we have an opportunity to show the Caribbean region, the US and the world, that we are moving forward in the 21st century. That the Virgin Islands rejects this self-hating colonial mindset systemic practice. 14 states have passed what is known as a Crown Act legislation, and similar acts currently are being considered in other states. We've also invited the Department of Education and the Board of Education to provide to this body an update regarding the current state of their plans for the 2022 school reopening. Across our nation, many of our fellow states and territories have implemented comprehensive strategic plans for the reopening, for the return of in-person learning, many of them already, of course, in in-person learning. Many of these jurisdictions include our fellow U.S. island territories, which have been effective at utilizing federal dollars to fund and implement the return of their schools to in-person learning. It is my hope that today, both the legislature and the people of the Virgin Islands can be informed by our administrators on how these same federal dollars are being spent to return our children into in-person learning. And now at this time, ask Madam Clerk, please read the roll call. Roll call.
Roll call. Yep. November 23rd, 2021.
Speak into the mic. More into the mic.
Members, Senator Donna Fred Gregory. Absent. Senator Kenneth Gittens. Excused. Absent. Senator Carla Joseph. Present. Senator Milton Potter. Present. Senator Janelle Saru. Present. Senator Kurt Vialet. Senator Kurt Vialet, absent. Senator Genevieve Whitaker. Present. So we have 3 absent and 4 present. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Quorum having been established. Madam Clerk, I'd like to read today's agenda into the record.
Revised 2 agenda. Members of the Committee, Education and Workforce Development, Honorable Janelle Saru, Vice President, Honorable Donna Fred Gregory, Honorable Kurt Vialet, Honorable Kenneth Gittens, Honorable Milton Potter, Honorable Carla Joseph, Honorable Genevieve Whitaker, Legislative Secretary, Chairwoman, Committee on Education and Workforce Development, November 21st, 2021. The Committee on Education and Workforce Development, hearing, November 23rd, 3 p.m. Earl B. Otley Legislative Chambers. Block 1, the committee will receive testimony on the following bill. Bill 34-0147, an act amending the Virgin Islands Code, Title 10, Chapter 1, Sections 2 and 3 relating to discrimination on account of race to include discrimination on the basis of hair texture, and Title 17, Chapter 3 relating to education to enact the Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair Act, or the Virgin Islands Crown Act of 2021. Sponsored Senators Alma Francis Heyliger and Genevieve R. Whitaker. Invited testifiers, Ajoa Asamoah, founder and CEO, ABA Consulting, leader of the Crown Coalition. Denise Benjamin, owner, Miss Naturalista. Mrs. Amina Salim, Mr. Shamari Moorhead, and Mrs. Kimberly Moorhead. Block 2, 5:30 p.m. The committee will receive testimony from the Virgin Islands Department of Education and the Virgin Islands Board of Education on the plans for the 2022 school reopening. Invited testifiers: Raquel Berry Benjamin, Commissioner, Virgin Islands Board of Education; Kaiser Callwood, Chairman, VI Department of Education.
That concludes the reading of the agenda. That
concludes the reading of the agenda, revised 2.
Madam Clerk, do we have any letters, correspondence, any excuse letters that need to be read into the record?
Yes, we do.
The committee stands for a 2-minute recess. The Committee on Educational Workforce and Development is now back out of recess. Madam Clerk, please read the letters into the record. Excuse letters.
Certainly. November 23rd, 2021, Honorable Genevieve Whitaker, Chairperson, Committee, sent in via email. Dear Senator Whitaker, please excuse my absence from legislation session scheduled for today, November 23rd, 2021. As you are aware, I am still currently under my doctor's care as I continue my recuperation. I note the importance of the agenda items to be discussed today and regret not being able to attend. I thank you in advance for your understanding and wish you all a productive hearing, conducting work on behalf of the people of our territory. Sincerely, Kenneth L. Gittens, Senator.
Okay. Any other
That
letter?
concludes.
And the other letter?
And the other letter?
Yep.
Late arrival on Committee on Education and Workforce Development. Dear Chairperson Whitaker, please accept this letter as a formal notice of my late arrival to today's Committee on Education and Workforce Development meeting, which is scheduled to begin at 3 in the Earl B. Otley Legislative Chambers on St. Thomas. Please have all circulated documents placed on my desk for immediate review upon my arrival. Thank you for your consideration on this matter. Kindest regards, Donna Fret Gregory, President, 34th Legislature of the Virgin Islands. That concludes the letter.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Block 1 testifiers. And I just wanted to we're going to kind of lay the foundation for today. We're going to do a quick mic check. Also, everyone's camera will need to be on. And so we'll start off. I'll start off with the first testifier, Ms. Ajua Asamayo. Just do a quick mic check. You could even just put your name on the record so we can hear your voice. Just do a quick mic check. Ms. Asamayo. Asamoah?
Are you all able to hear me?
No, we can't hear. Okay, so hold on. We'll move on to the next testifier. So I do see. Yeah, we can see you, but we can't hear you. Talk a little bit, because I want to make sure we know that when you come on, we can all hear you. So just say your name as well. Say your name so we can hear you.
It looks as if other people can hear me. Is that right?
Great, excellent. Just turn up your volume a bit so we can. Okay, wonderful. I hear you now. Mr. and Mrs. Moorhead, Mr. Shamari Moorhead and Mrs. Kimberly Moorhead.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, thank you. Great. And Miss Benjamin, Miss Denise Benjamin.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, thank you. Yes, so everyone just try to turn your volume. I heard actually Miss Benjamin the loudest, so Ms. Trump, you can turn up as much as you can. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so we'll first off begin today's hearing. I always, of course, one of our rules, and as we have testifiers, of course, it's a bill that I support. I want to proceed. What we're going to do is have you raise your right hand, and I'm going to read the oath of office. And after I read the oath of, not office, the rule, the oath rule, you will just say, I do, okay? Okay. Do you solemnly affirm that under penalty of perjury that the testimony you will give to this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, to the best of your knowledge and belief? Raising your right hand. Everyone raise your hand, right hand. Okay. And repeat, just say, I do. I do.
I do.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. And okay, so thank you. We want to do a quick recess. We have another letter that came in, so we'll just for about a 1 minute recess. This Committee on Education and Workforce Development stands in recess for 1 minute. The Committee on Education and Workforce Development is now at a recess. I just want to indicate that I do appreciate the fact that we've had a lot of correspondence come in. So we're just, the recess was really, as we have a number of persons really in support of this bill. So at this time, we'll start off. I'll first have Ms. Adjoa Asamoah. Would you please read your testimony into the record? Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. I'm here speeding up, so. Do we have, first off, let me have does anyone speak to this measure? I do. I will now recognize Senator Alma Francis Heyliger. Senator, you may proceed.
Can you hear me? Thank you. Good afternoon. I would like to say good afternoon to my colleagues, to the testifiers, to the people of this territory. When I was sworn in January the 11th, one of the pieces of legislation I submitted immediately was this piece of legislation, the Crown Act. As a young lady being born and raised in the Caribbean and knowing quite a bit when it comes to dealing with my natural hair, it was a journey. But what I also recognized is that not only was it a journey for me to deal with my natural hair, there were so many in my community and around the world and in the United States that were being discriminated against something that we were born with. It was being utilized as a way to separate. It was being utilized as a way to hinder people from advancing in their careers and even limit people when it comes to education. Bill number 34-0147 is a piece of legislation that is here to really put an end to the type of discrimination that has been used against blacks and African Americans throughout this world. I am asking for the support of my colleagues today. I am not a member of this committee, and when this bill is put forward, I am genuinely asking for your support. For me, the Crown Act symbolizes something that can really, really be a tool to be a barrier to things that hinder us as a people. And when I look at all the different states that have continuously attempted to sign on, as of right now, there are about 14 states that have enacted their own Crown Act. Recently, up for this year, I think 5 states have already signed on and enacted their own Crown Act in their state. Also, there are several other states that are moving legislation such as this to end hair texture discrimination within their communities. And I too am looking forward to the Virgin Islands being a part of this movement. This is not something that just came up. For myself, when we first started to talk about it and discuss what was happening, I had open and candid conversations with individuals that wondered if this was even an issue here in the territory. As you know, our population is predominantly black. But when we dove in and really discussed what was happening, we saw and I heard so many stories of individuals and people, whether they were children, people in the workplace, the discussion on social media that's happening, where people were very much concerned that they were looked over for a job, even here in this territory, because they might have had locks in their hair. You had children that were told they couldn't wear specific hairstyles because we were afraid that they might carry weapons in their hair. You know, these were the type of things that were being associated with hair texture and hairstyles of Black and African American people. And I am hoping that today, with the testifiers as well as my colleagues, we'll be able to push forward this piece of legislation as just a step forward in the right direction. We have a small video that I'm going to ask media to play for us, potentially to give you guys a little bit more of a bird's eye view as to what the Crown Act is doing, not only what we want to do here, but across the United States as well. Thank you.
Hair discrimination has and continues to be one of many controversial inequities members of the Black community face in schools and workplaces across the U.S. Many people have sacrificed education, jobs, and other opportunities due to discriminatory dress codes and hair policies. Now the Crown Act, first passed in California, is one step closer to becoming a federal law. It would prohibit schools and workplaces from discriminating against a person's hairstyle, such as locks, braids, twists, and knots. Companies like UPS are already changing their long-standing restrictions on beards and natural hairstyles.
I was at school. The principal told me that I had to leave completely and that I couldn't come back unless I changed my hair. They said in order to wear my hair extensions, I would have to have a doctor's note. I felt like I wasn't worthy.
People getting fired from jobs, girls sent home from school because they have braids. That's not okay.
My hair doesn't have anything to do with my education.
So much of our persona, our bodies are policed on an everyday basis. It's time for us to push back and say we are more than our hair.
It's not just about hair, and people shouldn't trivialize it as such. This is a national movement. We define professionalism both in school and work.
Yes, I am Tracy Ellis Ross. I am many things, but I am the CEO, founder, and majority owner of Pattern Hair Care, Pattern Beauty. I'm an actress, I'm an American citizen, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend, and this is Inheritance. It's a panel hosted by Color of Change where we will discuss how to support hair love and small Black beauty businesses. I'm joined by Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who I call one of my friends, Representative Herod, and Arisha Hatch, the Vice President of Color of Change, who have all led and supported efforts to fight hair discrimination through the Crown Act. And by the end of this panel, who will all be my friends. This is a really important and necessary conversation. Black hair is a portal into our souls, and we think of the maps of freedom that were hidden in our braids. Angela Davis and her afro as a symbol of pride and revolution. Frederick Douglass, his hair as an expression of prosperity and perseverance against all odds. Black hair has been at the center of economic, political, and cultural revolutions, and hairstyle discrimination is an economic and civil rights issue. Grooming policies are arbitrarily enforced to prevent access to academic and economic opportunities for the Black community, a way to further negate who we are and where we come from. And the Crown Act is an essential policy safeguarding the existence, dignity, and humanity of Black people. Many people have dealt with hair discrimination in the workplace and at schools. Only a month ago, UPS finally ended their ban on natural Black hairstyles. And there is still so much work to be done because hair discrimination is race discrimination. We have massaged love into our roots as a ritual of resistance, and we are inheriting the legacy of who we are. So let's just dive in.
It's just been our experience as Black folk that there has been so much trauma and hurt and harm that has been codified in lawmaking that this is an opportunity for us to codify, liberation. To codify justice, to liberate us to show up as our most authentic selves. Every Black woman has a story of hair discrimination, as do many Black men and non-binary folks. You have the overt in public cases, like a school just outside of my district that suspended 2 sisters for wearing braids. But then you have the coded language about what's professional and appropriate. In fact, if you were to do a quick Google image search of unprofessional hairstyles, most of those images would be Black women. So I think it's, we're here today because for too long this has become a conflated part of our experience as Black folks, and in particular as Black women. And, I currently am rocking a different kind of crown because of my alopecia. But when I was a candidate for Congress, there were many within our home community who tried to dissuade and discourage me from wearing my hair in a protective hairstyle of Senegalese twist because they feared that it would be a barrier to my success as a candidate.
Does anyone else? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, that's happening across the country, of course. And the reason why the Crown Act is so important is because there are so many people who feel like they can't be themselves in the workplace or at school or even in housing because of their hair. And that's not okay. And it really struck home for me when I was actually speaking about passing the Crown Act to a group of people, and a mother stepped up and said, my son used your bill to talk to me about being able to wear his dreadlocks. And I love him and he looks amazing, but I don't want him to be discriminated against. And I don't want him to wear his hair like that because he will not go far in his higher education. And to me, that struck me as the reason why the bill needs to exist, because we need more people who are able to wear their natural hair and who wear their hair however they choose to. I mean, in Colorado, we put a lot of things in the bill, protective styles, everything in the bill, because we wanted to make sure that people had the freedom to do so. But that mom is not going to feel safe or comfortable with her son wearing his dreadlocks until more people do, right? Until people start changing not only their rules and laws and policies, but their culture and recognize their discrimination. And I think the conversation around the Crown Act actually helps people to recognize their own discrimination.
We're back now with a movement to fight discrimination based on how people wear their hair. We've seen the stories, Black children being forced to remove their braids, even having their hair cut without parental permission, allegedly due to a school dress code. Well, now a new bill could stop that from happening. GMA contributor Megan Wright is here with the story. Good morning, Megan.
Good morning. The legislation is called the Crown Act and helps to stop prejudice in schools and workplaces. This segment is sponsored by Dove, one of the leaders of the movement to get the law passed. I spoke to an Oscar winner and a young girl who are also joining the fight against this kind of injustice. Take a look. Curls, twists, braids, and locks. These natural hairstyles are popular in the Black community, but many workplaces and schools have policies that discourage them. But there's a growing movement to hopefully change that. Filmmaker Matthew Cherry created the animated short film Hair Love. The 7-minute short tells the story of a father learning how to do his daughter's hair for the first time.
That was so much fun.
The film earning Cherry an Oscar and a platform that he used to introduce audiences to new legislation.
Hair Love was done because we wanted to see more representation in animation. We wanted to normalize Black hair. There's a very important issue that's out there, it's the Crown Act.
The Crown Act is a bill that demands protection against race-based hair discrimination in the workplace and in schools. The word crown holds the message, creating a respectful and more open world for natural hair.
A lot of different ethnic groups is not even anything they have to think about. They're able to, wear their hair how they want to, get up in the morning, go to work, go to school, and, nobody bothers them. For Black people and people with natural textured hair, it's an issue.
Matthew Cherry is a spokesperson for our sponsor, Dove. Dove co-founded the Crown Coalition in 2019 to advocate for the passing of the Crown Act across the country. So far, the bill has been signed into law in only 14 states.
It allows you to have a resource if you're in one of the states that pass a law to have a course of legal action to try to help rectify the situation.
Like in the case of 14-year-old Faith Finity, who back in 2018 was told wearing braids violated her school's uniform policy.
It was my first day of 6th grade, and my homeroom teacher was going over the rules. And when she got the dress code, she asked me in front of everyone if my hair was real or fake. I just tried to, brush it off and tell her that, it's my hair. And then a little later, the guidance counselor came in and she told me that I had to remove my braids.
How would you describe how you felt that day?
I was really hurt. I just didn't understand where all this was coming from.
She was denied an education because of how she wore her hair. And, that's awful. That shouldn't happen to any child.
Faith's brother capturing the incident on video and posting it online where it quickly went viral.
What's wrong with her hair?
And he caught me bursting into tears. And a lot of people saw it.
Faith is now a spokesperson for Dove, doing what she can to bring more awareness to the Crown Act.
Are there any changes that you're hoping to see?
I really want to see the Crown Act passed in all 50 states.
if people want to join the fight to help Dove end race-based discrimination, they would go to dove.com/crown, and that will lead them to petitions that they can sign to help spread the word.
Thank you. That was a short, 9-minute video I really wanted to share with you guys to get the crux and understanding of how important the Crown Act is and how it potentially can have an impact on so many people's lives. So thank you, Madam Chair, for the indulgence, and I ask my colleagues to please support Bill 34-0147.
Thank you, Senator Francis Heyliger, and I really appreciated that video. It's a great way to show this on a national basis that this is a growing movement. And again, we look forward to, as a prime sponsor, I look forward to the passage today of this legislation. We'll now move to the testifiers. They've received some support letters for this measure that we will read in as correspondence. At this time, I would now like to proceed with our first testifier, Ms. Adjoa Asamoah. You may now proceed with your testimony, and thank you.
Thank you so much. Is everyone able to hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yes. You are. Okay, I wanted to make sure. Thank you so much again. Greetings, Chairwoman Whitaker and distinguished members of the committee. For the record, my name is Adjoa B. Asamoah, and as the racial equity champion, political operative, and social impact strategist who not only developed the legislative strategy for, but who leads the nationwide Crown Act movement on behalf of the Crown Coalition, co-founded by Dove, the National Urban League, and others, it is a pleasure to be here today. As the daughter of the African diaspora by way of Ghana, it is my honor to testify in support of Bill number 34-0147, known as the Crown Act, with the changes noted yesterday. Before I go any further, I'd like to note that I'm here on behalf of the Crown Coalition, which includes more than 70 prominent organizations, including the legacy civil rights organizations, the predominantly Black sororities, the National Bar Association, the National Council of Negro Women, the U.S. Black Chambers of Commerce, ADL, the Links Association of Black Psychologists, ACLU, NAACP, LDF, SEIU, YWCA, American Academy of Pediatrics, and so many others. So I ask for just a little grace on time. There is a long-standing and problematic practice of racial discrimination based on hair in the United States. There have been countless cases where Black people have been discriminated against for wearing natural hair and or protective styles, including, but not limited to, braids, locks, twists, bantu knots, afros, etc. This form of racial discrimination includes being fired, passed over for promotions, and even having offers of employment rescinded. It impacts the upward mobility of individuals and families, and it has been the reason far too many children have missed school and had negative educational experiences. As I think about the work I've done across the country at the local, state, and federal levels, I think about a dynamic little girl who was featured in the video in Louisiana who was sent home in tears because she wore beautiful braids that were deemed a violation of school rules. I think about DeAndre Arnold in Texas, who I testified alongside, who was told he could not participate in his high school graduation ceremony with his friends because of his locks. I think people all over collectively gasped witnessing Andrew Johnson, a boy, a student wrestler, and I say boy intentionally because the adultification of Black children is also an issue, but a student wrestler in New Jersey who was forced to make a decision he should have never had to make, and that was to choose between having his locks cut on the mat with people cheering him on and his identity attacked, or forfeiting a match he had earned the right to participate in based on talent. Now, at the onset, I mentioned wearing a few hats, but I didn't include the one that I started my career wearing, and that's as a licensed therapist and a recovering adjunct psychology professor. And I share that only because I want it to be understood that the psychological impact of being told essentially that the way you were born is not okay is something people should never have to endure. The damage to one's self-esteem can be long-lasting, and perceptions of self-worth can be impacted, all in ways that, again, simply shouldn't exist. The African aesthetic, as everyone here knows, is beautiful, and it must be lifted in value. The issue of narrow beauty standards in America continues to perpetuate inequity, injustice, and discrimination against Black people, and it warrants a legislative fix. The Crown Act is the legislative fix. The bill remedies an inconsistency in anti-discrimination laws by amending codes to protect against discrimination based on traits historically associated with race, such as hair texture and protective styles. Despite great strides made to shift the culture around natural hair, hair discrimination remains a prevalent form of racial discrimination with serious economic and health consequences. It's fostered and reinforced by purportedly race-neutral grooming and dress code policies in the workplace and schools. It promotes a Eurocentric image of professional hair, and Black children and adults often feel compelled to employ styling practices to alter the natural characteristics of their hair, including time-consuming heat straightening and the use of harmful chemicals, which can lead to hair damage and hair loss. Now, whether you are natural, meaning without chemicals but blown out like mine is today, or super curly like I wore it on Saturday, or in twists like I wore it 2 weeks ago, or in locks, or in braids I have been known to wear, or in an afro that I also wore, our right to rock our crowns, how we choose, must be preserved and protected. As I prepare to close, I just need to note that for the past few years, I have worked tirelessly to build this movement and with 3 women behind the scenes. And in the spirit of ensuring Black women are recognized and properly credited for ensuring that Black public opinion also informs policy, I just need to say the names. Orlena, a fellow daughter of the diaspora by way of Nigeria, Kelly, and AC. I'd also like to acknowledge the Moorheads. It is exactly what this movement was designed to do, to ensure that we are participating in the public policy making process. On behalf of the Crown Coalition, including the many civic engagement focused organizations, we thank you, Senators Francis Heyliger and Whitaker, for your partnership and leadership championing the Crown Act in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Thank you for having me, and I am happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Thank you, Ms. Asamoah. And if you, because we didn't actually receive your testimony, and as we're here as colleagues, so please, if you can quickly as you can, please send your testimony to us, so that as we go through, when we get into the question and answer round, okay? Thank you. And again, thank you very much for your testimony, your tremendous advocacy. It was, leading up to today's hearing, there's a lot of efforts in the background, and certainly myself, Senator Francis Heyliger, along with her staff and our staff, we had meetings with the testifiers. We reached out because one of the important things as we go through a process, it's important that we get feedback from both on a national and local level. So I really also thank you and thank all those who are testifying today, as well as all those we met with leading up to today. Okay, we have our next up on our agenda is Miss Denise Benjamin. She's the owner of Miss Naturalisa. Miss Benjamin, you may proceed now with your testimony. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honorable Genevieve R. Whitaker, Chairwoman of the Committee of Education and Workforce Development, members of the committee, and other members of the 34th Legislature, other testifiers, and the listening and viewing audiences. I am Denise Benjamin, businesswoman, entrepreneur, and local business owner of the Miss Naturalista store in St. Croix, St. Thomas. Thank you for inviting me here today to consider the 34-0147 Crown Act, to share my experiences as a member of the local commerce and as an invested community member with a direct understanding of the importance of having the freedom to present ourselves to the world naturally, authentically, and organically to realize our best selves. 22 years ago, I sat in a beauty salon, surrendering yet another full day of my time, waiting with 10 other ladies for chemical treatments, hot irons, hair infusions. I took a long, hard look around the room, simply asked myself, why? Sadly, the answer came easy: conformity. From the eyes of our society that define what beauty should be, from the print ads and the movies of our favorite celebrities on TV, the media drove what Black beauty should look like. And at that time, it meant hours in the beauty salon, saddling our heads with painful hair relaxers, pricey weaves, synthetic or human hair, straighter, the longer the better. And as a business owner and the face of my brand, I was conditioned to believe that I had to conform to this neatly packaged idea of mainstream beauty so that my customers would feel comfortable in my then retail shop, trusting that I looked the part. It was not long after that I was inspired by a friend who had natural hair. I decided it was time for me to celebrate my kinky, coily, beautiful hair and all that I represented it. I organized conferences and trade shows here in the Virgin Islands, known as the I Am Beautiful Natural Hair Care Workshop and Expo, where women, men, families, and natural beauty care creators would come together to learn about natural beauty and begin to change the conversation on what mainstream media, corporations, policymakers had defined as their idea of acceptable. I listened to story after story from men, women who were told that their hair was not workplace appropriate, of how their hair had to be tamed if they were to be considered for jobs on the front lines of business in retail stores, professional work environments, and even in the medical world, of how their children were mandated by official schools' handbooks to tie in or cut off their tresses as not to be a distraction in the classrooms, and the list goes on. What does hair have to do with it? Simple: conformity. It surely should come as no surprise to members of this legislative body and to this audience that our hair, our Black hair in particular, is a direct link to our heritage. From historical Bible verses to modern and social leaders of today, our hair is our strength. It is our unique identifier. It is our creativity. It is our culture. We now see primetime nightly cable news anchor like Joy Reid on MSNBC proudly adorned in wild, wavy Black girl hairstyles. Political leaders, Stacey Abrams, taking on and dominating the toughest political opponents, styled to perfection in a halo of natural finger curls. And athletes like DeAndre Hopkins, one of NFL's best wide receivers. I join you here today as a supporter of the 34-0147 Crown Act. The freedom to wear one's hair in the style of choosing should be a natural right. It should not be governed by private or public industry. As the world is becoming a more curious place where people can celebrate the individuality, the 34-0147 Crown Act is critical and much needed stepping stone to inclusiveness. As a proud naturalista, a business owner that is continually inspired by my clients who celebrate their natural hair and breathe every day with the confidence of a cultural queen, and most importantly, as a mom of a beautiful 2-year-old Caribbean girl who is as wonderful, unique as she is beautiful, I ask you to support the 34-0147 Crown Act that will make it possible for every individual to present themselves in their work, school, in their communities, in their authentic crowns. As I close, we are a community inspired by nature with our cuisine, our lifestyle, our culture, most importantly, ourselves. Let us be naturally free to choose. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Benjamin, and thank you for, of course, as a local business owner, we can continue to commend you and your efforts, and really thank you for your testimony as well. Before moving to, we're going to read, we have a letter. As I indicated, we have individuals who also submitted letters in support. Madam Clerk, if you'd like to read that letter into the record.
First letter, Senate, State of Tennessee, Ramesh Akbari, State Senator, Shelby County, District 29, Tennessee General Assembly, dated September 29, 2021, to the Legislature of the Virgin Islands. This letter comes in support of Senator Alma Francis Heyliger and her Crown Act bill. This past legislative session, I was able to pass the Crown Act in the Tennessee State Senate by a 28-0 vote. I have received much support for this bill by many Tennesseans and others in the nation who wish to see it passed in all states and territories. To this day, many black people are discriminated against by their natural hair and any protective hairstyles they may wear. And this piece of legislation will seek to end that discrimination and normalize black hair in any workplace. My mother has made a name for herself as the hair doctor, and by formulating her own brand of natural hair care products, so I have seen firsthand how some men and women have had to fight for their own self-respect in how they wore their hair. No one should have to experience that. It is my hope that this bill can be passed in all legislative assemblies so we can work towards ending the discrimination of black hair in the workplace. This is a good bill, and if made into law, will prove to be beneficial in the years to come. Respectfully, Ramesh Akbari, District 29, Shelby County, Tennessee General Assembly. End of letter.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And we appreciate a lot of the energy around this important measure. We thank those coming from near and far. We'll now proceed to our next testifiers. We have Mr. Shamari Moorhead and Mrs. Kimberly Moorhead. You may proceed.
Good day. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Good day, Honorable Senator Whitaker, members of the committee, fellow testifiers, Ms. Adoa, and my classmate, Denise Benjamin. My wife and I are here today to advocate on behalf of our 4 sons, ages 11, 8, 6, and 3, and many other Virgin Islanders who are currently or will be discriminated against based on their natural hair. Our children were blessed to grow academically during their years in Atlanta and through home learning. Zion received all A's in his advanced courses. Adonis is one of only 2 children in his gifted class, and now passed his kindergarten enrollment test for placement in the 1st grade. Despite their success in Atlanta, we yearn for a faith-based community that offered a stream-focused academic program, a safe classroom experience during the COVID pandemic, and immersion in the Virgin Islands culture. We are super excited that we found this at home in St. Croix. We would like your help in addressing one specific area: immersion in Virgin Islands culture through the acceptance of culturally appropriate hairstyles. The Virgin Islands is a unique place for children of African descent. We enjoy the freedoms and benefits of American citizenship while growing up seeing people who look like us lead at every level of society. Our community is also small enough where you really get a chance to meet and know your leaders. I've had the opportunity to meet or see many of you while grocery shopping, at restaurants, but many of our community events. Our sons had the opportunity to meet former Governor Mapp while we were out one night, and they've had the opportunity to meet Governor Bryan on several occasions. This just doesn't happen in the continental United States. As great as life is in the Virgin Islands, we were pleasantly surprised when we were told that one of our sons could not attend parochial school with twists in his hair. He loves his hair. His hair was not distracting. It did not present a safety hazard to himself or anyone around him. It was not so tall that it blocked the view of children behind him. It was not filthy. There were no accessories, artificial coloring, or other unnatural changes. When we pressed the administration, the only explanation we could get was that this is the way it has always been and will be. When we pressed further, we were told that the policy was put in place because kids play with their hair. Well, if this is the case, Girls will be forced to cut their hair as well. We were told that we need to learn to adapt because when our son grows up, his job may not allow him to come to work with twists. We were given two choices: cut it or face expulsion for all of our kids. Ultimately, he cut his hair just enough so that he can go to school. We were hard pressed to believe that in a predominantly Black community there were policies in place that rejected our natural God-given hair. We spoke to other parents who went through similar experiences. We talked to administrators, lawyers, and other community leaders to gather more information on why this is and what we could do differently.
Hair played a significant role in African culture, and it indicated one's tribe, spirituality, social status, occupation, and even age. Men and women wore elaborate hairstyles, locks, plaits, and twists. For example, Maasai males wore long braids dyed with red clay. When Europeans began kidnapping Africans, they initially admired the hairstyles, but later started shaving the heads of Africans in an attempt to strip them of their humanity and their culture. Updated uniform policies promote equality. They encourage discipline. They combat bullying and provide financial relief for parents. Outdated uniform policies fail to recognize the cultural diversity of the student body. Research shows that children suffer when they are denied the ability to wear hairstyles favored within their social groups. School policies that make it more likely for non-white children to be disciplined or sent home for hairstyle violations limit contributions to educational equality. We both have worked in a corporate environment for the past 20 years and have suffered emotionally from requests to wear our hair outside of our social norm. We are committed to teaching our 4 boys the strength of diversity.
The presentation we provided highlights the background and importance of hair in Black culture and to share research that supports modifying the Virgin Islands laws to better promote inclusion and eliminate implicit and explicit bias both in schools and in the workplace. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to your support.
Thank you very much, Mr. and Mrs. Moorhead. Thank you much for your testimony and also for your advocacy. As we look at this measure, it's really unfortunate that we are having this conversation today, right? But we know we have to do this. And I would also say, if we think about the emotional impact this has, I know both you as parents came to me. We had a grandparent, one of our other testifiers who wasn't able to be here today, Miss Amina Salim, about her granddaughter with sister locks. Another one of our supporters, we had a little boy with his hair was long. He had to cut off his hair in order to go to, in this case, parochial school. And so as we champion, one of the things as we go through this hearing process, you will also learn that on the national level, there's efforts being made to, federally, in order that this is just the lay of the land. And globally, of course, as we understand. So we are here right now making significant history, because we know that when we talk about Virgin Islands history and culture and really image, hair is part of that. We go throughout history. We know that these are some of the things that were stripped over time, and here we are now having to, of course, importantly champion this effort. We will now move on. We have 2 other letters, and then we'll proceed with the first round of questioning. Madam Clerk, please read the next letter into the record.
The next letter is from Kelly Richardson Lawson, CEO, Joy Collective. I am the founder and CEO of Joy Collective, a polycultural marketing and creative agency focused on purpose-driven work. We are a certified women-owned, minority-owned business, and along with my business partner, Orlena Nwaka Blanchard, we have been working behind the scenes for over 2 years on behalf of Dove and the Crown Coalition to advance anti-hair discrimination legislation. This topic is not new. Qualitative and quantitative research conducted by the Dove brand unpacked the real impact of hair discrimination against Black women that leads to the disparate impact we see manifested socially, and economically. With 80% of black women saying they feel the need to change their natural hair to fit in at the workplace. The Crown Coalition is an allegiance of organizations committed to inclusivity and racial equity. The Crown Coalition was founded by Dove, Unilever, the National Urban League, Color of Change, Western Center on Law and Poverty, and is supported by 85 organizations nationwide, including Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, the National Council of Negro Women, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the Lynx Incorporated, the NAACP, Jack and Jill of America, and many more. The Crown Act, or legislation inspired by the Crown Act, is law in 14 states: California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Maryland, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Virginia, and Washington. I am encouraged that the Crown Act is being passed to ensure a respectful and open world for natural hair. I am incredibly proud to stand with Senator Alma Francis Heyliger and the fellow distinguished leaders of the Virgin Islands Legislature on behalf of Dove and the Crown Coalition to see the Crown Act passed in the Virgin Islands. Thank you for your leadership on this issue. End of letter.
And do we have any other letters? Do we have
There is another.
Okay. You may proceed.
Letter from Orlena Nwoka Blanchard, President, Joy Collective. I am the president of Joy Collective, a cultural intelligence marketing and creative agency. We are a certified women-owned, minority-owned business, and along with my business partner, Kelly Richardson Lawson, we have been working behind the scenes for over 2 years, leading the work to advance anti-hair discrimination legislation on behalf of the Crown Coalition. The Crown Coalition is an allegiance of organizations committed to inclusivity and racial equity. It was founded by National Urban League, Color of Change, Western Center on Law and Poverty, and the Dove brand, a Unilever company, and is now supported by 85 organizations nationwide, including National Council for Negro Women, Delta Sigma Theta and Alpha Kappa Alpha Sororities Incorporated, the Lynx Incorporated, Jack and Jill of America, and many more. The Crown Act, or legislation inspired by the Crown Act, is law in 14 states: California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Maryland, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Virginia, and Washington. This topic is not new. Many individuals and organizations have spent years fighting for racial equity and have long since identified hair as a racial characteristic that invokes bias and discriminatory behavior in our society. We are honored for our work to have provided a platform to unify the many voices raising awareness for this issue, so action like this bill can be taken. Research we conducted on behalf of the Dove brand unpacked the real impact of hair discrimination against black women that leads to the disparate impact we see manifested socially and economically. As an African immigrant who came to this country as a middle schooler over 35 years ago, I have spent the better part of those years putting toxic chemicals and endless hours into manipulating my hair to appear in a way I believe was received as beautiful and thus acceptable by American standards. It's been a long and often painful journey. That is why, as a black woman and as the mother of 3 sons, I am encouraged that the Virgin Islands will allow a more respectful and open world for black women, men, and children to thrive. I am incredibly proud to stand with Senator Alma Francis Heyliger and fellow distinguished leaders of the Virgin Islands in support of this bill. End of letter.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, we're going to take just a brief 1-minute recess as we go into the round of questioning. The Committee on Education and Workforce Development stands in recess for 1 minute. The Committee on Education and Workforce Development is now back out of recess. We will proceed with our first round. We'll do 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Okay. Okay. Senator Saru, you're up for your 5 minutes. You may proceed.
Thank you and good afternoon. Mr. Moorhead, good afternoon. Does he have sound?
Yes, good afternoon, Senator Saru.
Afternoon. Question. I'm a bit concerned with the position of your testimony today insofar as us being able to legislate for a private institution. So do you recognize the trepidation that we may have? And I liken it to St. Thomas St. John District. So I went to All Saints Elementary School for quite some time. And we had Muslims and people of various religious backgrounds. But if you sign your child up to go to All Saints School, when it is chapel on Wednesday, you have to report to chapel. If you don't want to go to chapel, then you find a different institution to go to. So do you understand where we're coming from insofar as being concerned about some level of over-legislating into private institutions?
Yes, I do. I went to public school most of my life. My last year and a half, I went to St. Joseph High School in St. Croix, where students were, I had friends that wore braids and cornrows and everything. So, at the time, it wasn't a problem. And in speaking to, former principals at different, parochial schools and getting their feedback that they don't agree with the policy, I understand that, from a feminist perspective and the separation of church and state, it is going to be a problem. But one of the things that I know that's different here is that many of these private institutions receive public funding.
Okay, so let's stop there. Those private institutions receive federal funding, and the pass-through for the federal funding is the VI Department of Education. Private schools don't receive funding from the local budget. Are you aware of that?
I'm aware of that, yes. So I know that for the local government, you may not have, the power to enforce it in a private institution like a private, Catholic school or any other institution. But I know that, this is something that if it does pass and someone does challenge it, this is something for the court to decide on. And I think, with a Catholic school or any of our other parochial schools decide that this is something that they want to fight against in court, that they want to fight against racial discrimination in court.
Hold on a second. Okay, so I may have to respectfully disagree in a sense, because I think that you are under the impression, I don't want you to think that because you believe that a private school receives funding, that it comes from the local government, and it does not. There is, it used to be called Title V funds. I think it's changed to something else. The non-pub schools receive funding by way of the state education level, and the state education level would be the VI Department of Education. Now, I've expressed some concerns with the bill sponsor, and we have a good rapport, but today we're going to just debate the substance of the argument, nothing personal, disclaimer for the public, because sometimes we tend to think that when women have a difference of opinions, it becomes a cat fight, and it's not. I have locks, and I've had natural hair my entire life.
1 minute.
From elementary, I was carnival queen with natural hair, and I only end up with locks by way of being the only black player on the volleyball team, and I couldn't drive to Miami all the time to find somebody to comb my hair, so I just allow locks to grow and keep growing and growing, and now I have locks, right? And YouTube helped me keep them in order. But long story short, as a teacher, if a young man loses out his hair and does not comb his hair, as a former educator, I am putting him through the door. And my other concern too, and the bill sponsor will address them when the time comes, is our high schools have a JROTC program that requires a level of grooming, and the JROTC program is preparing you for ROTC in college or the military, the armed forces, Navy, Air Force, whatever. I don't want the bill to be ambiguous in nature, and I've read it about 4 or 5 times, where if I may conclude, Madam Chair, with your indulgence.
You may conclude.
That where it passes over into the regulations of those programs. In CTEC, in a refinery or other VOCAD programs, there are some professions where the hair becomes an issue of safety and not discrimination. So the point I really want to drive home for me is that I don't want grooming or appearance to become an issue of race. Grooming and appearance is one thing, and I don't want the law and the way it's written, the verbiage, to give the impression for a young man or young woman to feel like will come to school looking any kind of way at the job anyway, and you tell me, oh, I got bantu nuts and I have a protective hairstyle and blah, blah, blah. That's my only concern, the applicability of it to a territory. Where is the problem? What are we solving? Is there data locally to show that there are high levels of discrimination? And I yield at this time because I did go over time, Madam Chair, but that's just some of the concerns I have. And of course, I look forward to the bill sponsors' dialogue when her time comes. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Senator Saru. I want to highlight in terms of collection of data, we know one of the things we struggle with right here in the Virgin Islands is collection of data, but I know that calls to my office and the pain that, that when we have a grandparent, or parents coming to me about their children and firsthand witnessing the impact that when you tell a child they can't wear their hair this way and so on. So there's some emotional impact of this. Do we need to collect data? Definitely. I think through this process, we'll also be collecting the data. I want to turn to Ms., before proceeding to the next speaker, next senator. Ms. Samoa, do you like to respond concerning the point made about the private institutions, the concerns over legislation that would impact the private schools?
Sure. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. As I shared with you all when we met previously, that is a valid concern, and that is the way that we've been able to pass this across the country. Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see you. So turn on your video so we can see you.
Okay. Yes. Can you do both now?
Yes.
Okay. Apologies. I would just like to note that as I shared previously, that is a concern, a valid concern in terms of the way we have structured this bill across the country. It has been, the protections have extended to both the workplace and public charter schools, and private schools have been excluded. Regarding data, however, I will note that the lack of quantitative data should not prohibit you from passing a bill. One, we know that largely prior to this bill, people have essentially suffered in silence and around the table. And so we should not have to rely on quantitative data. And this is as someone who's done both quant and qual in order to suggest that a bill that extends statutory protection against racial discrimination, we should not have to have the quantitative data prior to implementing a bill. If even one, by way of just anecdotal stories, if even one, that should be enough for, I would imagine, for you all to want to pass this bill. So that's all I wanted to weigh in, acknowledging is that without the bill, people have not necessarily come forward to share their stories around race-based hair discrimination. And then lastly, I'll just note, because there was an issue, the member mentioned safety. This bill does not trump, for lack of better language, OSHA. So any rules that are imposed for safety, and meaning safety only, not to indiscriminately discriminate, but for safety, OSHA regulations trump this bill. So, for example, if you work at a restaurant and you have to wear a hairnet for workplace safety, well, then locks and braids can go in a hairnet as well.
Thank you, Ms. Asamoah. Senator Joseph, you may proceed with your questioning.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Pleasant good afternoon, colleagues, testifiers, the listening and viewing audience. Pleasant and happy Thanksgiving in advance. I am really thankful that we are at the point where we're having this type of conversation regarding hairstyles and discrimination. I already have in my, as the bill has labeled it, my protective hairstyles. I just want to ask a series of questions because I'm wondering about the applicability of this legislation to the Virgin Islands, wherein the persons of color are the dominant, are the majority. I know for me, and I could attest to this, I've been wearing braids from the time I was in elementary school. I've been wearing extensions from that time as well. I've never encountered, this is just my testimony, any type of discrimination from my instructors, principal. I wasn't even called to the principal's office when my mother first put in extensions in my hair. So I am really concerned about the applicability to this legislation here. Let me ask Ms. Asamoah, because you are from a national association in the United States. Are these laws, the Crown Act primarily looked at in demographics wherein African American people of color or the minority?
Thank you so much for your question, Senator. The Crown Coalition is a national alliance focused on outlawing race-based hair discrimination. As was shared, it has passed, the Crown Act, what we deem the Crown Act, has passed in 10 states, and legislation inspired by the Crown Act has been passed in 4 states, with multiple municipalities having passed it as well, in states where the state legislature has not yet passed the bill. In terms of demographics, yes, the U.S. Virgin Islands is unique in that it is a predominantly Black community, which is not necessarily the case here on the mainland. But I shared in my introduction that I'm a daughter of the diaspora with a father born under colonization in what would become the Republic of Ghana. And we have seen in my own other country that a student was discriminated against for wearing locks. So merely and we have done it to ourselves, and we can, have another conversation about the impact of colonization and enslavement on our people in terms of how we view ourselves and what we think is a standard of beauty based on what we've been bombarded with by way of images in the media.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I want to thank you so much for placing your remarks on the record, but my time is running. And I noted in the legislation, I don't know who to ask this question, on page 2, that it says, we have racial and national, page 2, the first whereas, we have racial and national orange discrimination. Where is the data to show that discrimination? I know my other colleague mentioned it, and I am a person, I look at data. I even reached out to the Department of Justice, which handles discrimination, and I'm starting to have some discussion relative to the Civil Rights Commission. But it would have been good for us to at least have the testimony from the Department of Justice here to see if they have logged any type of level of discrimination in the schools, or even the Department of Education regarding our students wearing protective hairstyles, even locks, because we know a lot of our young people who attend school right now, they wear locks. Number of students is their preference to wear their hair in natural styles. So my concern is whether you have an issue here regarding discrimination relative to the hair texture and hairstyle here in the Virgin Islands. It's good that we are having these type of discussions, but I am still out to bat, and I'm really concerned whether this is really a legislation that is fitting for here in the Virgin Islands. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time.
Thank you, Senator Joseph. Point of information, Senator Francis Heyliger.
I do appreciate the conversation we're having today. One of the things that I do in bringing forward legislation and the decision to bring this forward, it had nothing to do with nationally. I recognize that this was a problem here in our community after having several conversations with individuals that live here. And I'm going to admit, at the beginning, I said, but the majority of us are black. So why would that be an issue? But when I started to listen, when one woman told me that she was passed up for a promotion in this very government because she had locks in her hair, that's a problem.
Yeah, we have a lot.
When you have a child that's being told that we don't want you to play in our little group at school because we don't like your hairstyle, that is a problem. It's a lot of things that because we assume that we have the skin color, we don't recognize that we do it to ourselves. So I am not going to assume that because we are predominantly black here, we're not recognizing that these are issues in our community. We also have to take note that quite often some of the very people that employ the majority of us are not black. And their requirement for their workplace at times causes issues for those that are black, that when it comes to their protective hairstyles. So we have to keep all of this in context. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Francis Heyliger. I would like to recognize member of our committee, Senator Kurt Vialet. Good afternoon, Senator Vialet. Madam Clerk, please mark Senator Vialet as present. Okay, we'll move now on to Senator Potter. You may proceed with your questions. Mic for Senator Potter.
Mic check. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, testifiers. I have no objections to prohibiting discrimination against persons because of the hair texture or appearance. I think it just makes good sense. It's a right thing to do. If a student, I know my millennial colleague on the left said if she was a teacher and a student came to school with braids that were kind of unbraided and uncombed, that she would feel compelled to bringing it to his attention and possibly putting him out of class. Knowing where hair is, and I think where hair textures, hairstyles, I think the whole Eurocentric perspective of beauty and what is good hair and all of that, I see it as coming to an end. I am seeing persons, as one of the testifiers said earlier, in responsible positions of leadership who have natural hair. I know I have sons, and I don't have any hair on my head, but I have sons who have hairstyles that are different from hairstyles that I knew when I was growing up. Natural hair is real. It is something that is, I think, it used to be viewed, or there was possibly a judgment that this hair is unprofessional, but I do not believe that it is right to discriminate against someone because of their hair texture in a school environment. I do not believe it is right to send a student home, for example, because of their hair texture. My question is, and I had a concern when the Moorhead spoke, I had a concern also about a parochial school and the reach of this bill with regards to, and I had a good conversation with the sponsor of the bill earlier about this. To what extent, and I believe Ms. Asamoah, is her name? Ms. Asamoah can answer the question. I heard her say that the Crown bill on a national level excluded privates or exempted private schools from coverage. And would that be also private and parochial parochial schools, the way that that bill is written on a national level?
The way the bill has been written on the national level in the majority of the states where it's passed is it extends statutory protection in the workplaces and in public schools and public charters. We haven't included language like parochial and private versus just stated where it actually is enforceable.
Okay. Thank you for that. So the way that this bill is written, does this bill exempt private and parochial schools, similar to the way the bill on a national level has been written? And I mean,
if that question is for me, I'm sorry, sir.
Sorry, I don't know if it's for you or perhaps the bill sponsor at some point can comment on that. But
One minute.
I'll hold that for a second. I know that our Civil Rights Commission plays a big role in discrimination, hearing discrimination cases. It is the first line that one would go to in the event that we have a discrimination. My concern is that the Civil Rights Commission has been defunct for the last 10 to 15 years. So I would really encourage Governor Bryan to send down some names so that we can have a fully functioning Civil Rights Commission. My next question. Now, if this bill were passed, and I know Ms. Asamoah made it clear that OSHA laws would trump this bill when you're talking about safety and security. Now, when it comes to entities, Madam Chair, may I just conclude?
You may.
Okay. When it comes to like police officers and firefighters, and I know during their basic training or even after basic training, there are some restrictions regarding the length of hair, etc. How would that impact the ability of the public employer to or sanction or regulate employees who, if this bill were passed, can now say, I have a protected hairstyle?
If I may ask.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
If I may ask, so from our research, the military, the U.S. military has actually changed their rules on hair. So unless it's a safety issue, they have no problem with long hair. They have no problem with braids. You can find, photos of men and women with braids, with cornrows, with locks in military uniforms. So unless, again, it becomes a safety issue where OSHA stands, then we shouldn't have a problem. So if this bill passes, employers can only have a say if it's a safety issue. You can't just just discriminate because you don't like braids or cornrows to say, hey, we need you to cut your hair. That I think is the basis for this bill being here, because it's been we have this idea of what beauty looks like. And it's been imposed on us for, hundreds of years. So it's time to change that conversation to, that's the safety issue. If you're born with hair and your hair grows out, unless it's a safety or it's blocking someone's view for you're in a classroom or something like, why are we using European standards for beauty?
I'll only just add that sometimes we see length used as a proxy for race, but to reiterate what Mr. Moore had said, it was now Madam Secretary Marcia Fudge who sent a letter to the then Secretary of Defense calling out the inherent bias both racial and gender bias and proposed bans on certain hairstyles, and that was in fact reversed, and that was for a proposed ban that came from the Army. So any rules or practices that are imposed strictly for safety must be adhered to. But in the example that I gave previously, if your hair has to be pinned up or in, a bun or something, assuming that you have that length hair, then it can be done the same way with natural or protective styles.
Thank you very much, testifiers. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time.
Thank you, Senator Potter. Senator Violet, you may proceed with your questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to the people of the Virgin Islands. Good afternoon, colleagues, and good afternoon to the testifiers. I'm reading the bill, and in the whereas clause, the 6th whereas clause, it speaks to educational, systemic deprivation of educational, and then it speaks about employment and other opportunities. But the bill in the enactment clause only speaks to education. So the bill, I'm not seeing where it's referenced in section 1, 2, or 3, where it speaks to employment. I just wanted to note that. I also want to say that presently, the public school does not prohibit any student from wearing dreads or braids. So students can attend the public school system with their natural hair. It is not prohibited, and a large number of our students, to include male and female, does attend school on a regular basis with dreads or with braids or with cornrow or other natural hairstyle. And there's quite a number of individuals in the Virgin Islands who are now going back natural. So I do understand the natural hairstyles. Both of my daughters have had their hair natural from birth, and they're now grown women. But I wanted to put on the record that I looked at the video at the beginning of the presentation, and I just wanted to say that Black America does not reflect the Black Virgin Islands. And I want us to keep that in mind as we move forward. Black America does not reflect the Black Virgin Islands. So it's not every single thing that Black America, the direction that they move in, is necessary for the Virgin Islands to move in that particular direction, because many times the issues that they are facing in Black America, we are not facing in the Black Virgin Islands. And I know individuals who are commissioners, who are senators, attorneys, doctors, etc., that got dreads or got braids. And they were not discriminated in the path moving forward. Have some discrimination taking place. I have not heard of any widespread discrimination at all. I haven't heard of any in quite a long time, but I just want us to caution, and the bill speaks to all school systems. It doesn't speak to just public schools. It speaks to private and parochial school. It also does not include language that would say that the hairstyle must conform to OSHA requirements in reference to certain classes that students might take. And one of the testifiers said that they do expect that the natural hairstyles would have to go into, if it need to be contained, if they're in a shop class, a vocational class, and you must put your hair in a particular style to be able to work in a shop. This bill does not have any provision that would say that your hairstyle must conform to OSHA requirements, in which it can't be, you can't just wear it loose and you're working around shop equipment. You'd have to contain it in a bun or put it up in a hairnet. So it's loosely
1 minute
worded, and I think we need to strengthen those areas. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Violet. And before I move to your point of Senator Francis Heyliger, I just wanted to make sure that the public is also aware that this legislation is being brought not just in a vacuum, but that a lot of what we're offering is also what's also being offered nationally. When we get into specifics in terms of OSHA and all these and things of that nature, what we have is legislation, because even to that, there are other hairstyles that are not necessarily contemplated by naming out every single hairstyle. So because you have locks and you have sister locks. I mean, what we're really trying to do here is to set a tone. Are we aware that there's a lot of acceptance of hairstyles and natural hair? Yes. I will also provide something as well. We have some workforce component developments here, right? Where I've, witnessed, children within our school system as we speak right now, where they have hair shows. And I haven't seen a mannequin that has a hair like mine. I mean, I haven't, do I know they're twisting and doing locks? I assume so, because I know some of these instructors. But if we even look at the educational level, what some in the cosmetology classes was being put out, there is really a more preference for straightened hair versus natural and so on. So this is something when we once passed, we can and get support from the stakeholder entities that we can ensure that we're not discriminating. What I also understand is that we cannot regulate the private schools to that extent, but let's really also support what's going on nationally. There is so much to do. There were so many causes to fight. This is just one more cause for those who even believe in reparations, those who believe in justice and equality. This is along with that. And we should, as legislators, shouldn't really be fighting among ourselves to push and support equity, equality legislation. That's what we're doing here. We want to stomp out discrimination wherever it exists. And for me, again, in bringing this measure, were constituents coming to me. I do not like to see people suffer. I don't like to see people go through pain, especially our children. And that's not fair for them, that their parents, grandparents have to be fighting like this just for something should the hair be neat? Yes. We know that we have uniforms and we have standards. So we know for a fact that the same school systems can set up the standards about how you must appear. Appearance is a basic thing. So it would be that they have the standard, you must come to school with a good appearance. But to continue to regulate people's hairstyles in 2021, we have an issue. And in this country we live in, I find though that human rights measures are very much difficult in the nation we live. Globally, we look at some of the measures around equity. We have a lot of equity measures throughout this world. And as the U.S. kind of comes up, actually, to some of the standards of the world where they're stomping out discrimination, we should join with that. So I see this measure as one step forward in us addressing something that is really, it is a problem here because we see it, because we are hearing testimony today about those concerns. Senator Francis Heyliger?
Thank you so much. Good afternoon once again. I want to thank my colleague when he shared the aspect that he said no work or employment section was in the bill. It wasn't specifically spelled out. It referenced the section of the title that we amended. If you look under section 2 that says Title 10 Virgin Islands Code Chapter 1, section 2 was amended, adding 2 definitions. That is the section of the code that speaks to employment and workforce. And we amended that section. So that's why we didn't explicitly reference it. We went directly to the code and amended to include that aspect of it. And I just want to say that, once again, for me, I understand the national movement, but I also understand the issues that happen here. We have a way in this community of somehow saying if it's not happening to me, it's not happening at all. And that is not the case. And when you have 15 people in this territory that was elected to represent all, we have to be the voice and the ears of the people of this territory. So when I come forward on their behalf to push something, it's because I'm hearing their cry. So understand me. I don't stand here one. I stand here as the voice of many that are being ill-treated in this community because of their here. And not because you don't hear them doesn't mean I don't. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Francis Heyliger. And actually, you may proceed with your questions. Senator Francis Heyliger, you may proceed with your questions. It's your turn.
Thank you so much. During this time period, I want to say thank you so much for coming and testifying on behalf of this bill. I want to ask Ms. Adjoa, when it comes to the specifics as it relates to the bill, when it comes to parochial schools, because that seems to be one of the major contentions and discussions we're having today. It is very clear, and we understand from my perspective, that because they are private entities, we cannot impose upon them. What would happen if this goes through the federal aspect? Because I'm not sure if you're aware, right now Senator Cory Booker, along with several co-sponsors, have a Crown Act, and it's Bill HR 2116 currently moving through Congress to do this on a federal level. What would happen if that federal aspect now becomes law?
Thank you so much for your question, Senator. Yes, I am aware Cory Booker is a very good friend, and I worked with him and the other members in Congress to get the Federal Crown Act introduced. So I am well aware of that language and that bill text as well. It is written in alignment with what I shared previously, in that it extends protections to the workplace as well as in public and public charter schools. I posed this question after having the conversation and hearing the concern of the Moorheads, and what my attorney, who has studied how the federal courts have ruled on this issue across the country, he conducted all of the legal research and developed the legal guidance memo that would inform the bill text, meaning what would become the Crown Act. And his response to that question around parochial schools is, I do not know the answer to that question. And he references, as advocates may want to run the question by a U.S. Virgin Islands attorney who could better assess how private schools versus public schools have been able to regulate grooming policies in the past, and what the courts have ruled under those circumstances. And the question that I posed was specifically regarding, and that was me listening to what I heard, because I am not familiar with the funding situation. I was told that all schools in the U.S. Virgin Islands, including parochial schools, receive public funds. So my question was, does that mean that the Crown Act would be enforceable in those private schools? And the response was what I just shared with you.
Thank you so much.
To that specific question.
Thank you so much. I also wanted to make sure in sharing that aspect that this piece of legislation that Senator Cory Booker is also pushing through Congress, so potentially we do have the Crown Act not only in local jurisdictions, specifically states as well as territories, we would also have it on a federal level as well. So I am hopeful he is successful in his endeavor. What I want to find out from one of the Miss Naturalista, what are some of the conversations that you have here locally, or you might have discussed with potential clients or anyone as it relates to natural hair and potential discrimination that they deal with here in the Virgin Islands?
Good afternoon, Senator. Yes, I think it's important, as you mentioned, the fact that because we're not hearing it, it's not happening because it's not happening to us. Myself, I've never been discriminated against. Again, it's my own knowledge of what I see beauty would look like. Now, as far as my experiences with customers who would come through the doors over the years, this is something that I see quite often. Surprised at that. And I would be surprised of some of the conversations that I'm hearing and the types of workplace that is experiencing some of this, about not having your hair conform to a set specific style. Again, these people are employed, but not by color who looks like us, but by, different nationalities. And this is where most times that I have come in contact with individuals sharing their experiences with, discrimination, not directly, but, indirectly. And it's something that no one has no board to go to complain. There's no way, no department that they could complain in reference to being discriminated against, not directly, indirectly. And most times it's, they throw it over their head, throw it over their shoulder. But I think that this is important of what we're doing here today to bring awareness, because it is happening, and it is happening in our schools, in our workplaces. And I think what this conversation that we're having today is a great one, a much needed one. And yeah, I definitely, again, I am in support of it, because not more so my experiences, but the experiences of my colleagues, my clients, those who my coworkers, whomever. This is happening all around us.
Thank you so much. I think my time was called.
Yes. I would like to thank you very much, Senator Francis Heyliger. I would like to recognize the presence of committee member, Senate President Donna Fred Gregory. Welcome. And if you're ready, you may proceed with your line of questioning. You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to my colleagues, and good afternoon to the testifiers. Good afternoon to the listening and viewing audience. So, I took some time to, first of all, let me apologize for being late. I was out spreading Thanksgiving cheers to the Ebenezer home families there. I took an opportunity to look at the bill and to look at what's going on in other states. I actually was following the meeting while I was away from the building, and I saw the discussion with some of our elected leaders on a national level, etc. I also saw where we have some states that have enacted the Crown Act, Colorado, Maryland, Virginia. And it's in some states, it's tied to schools, public accommodations. There's a whole, set of areas where the law applies around this anti-hair discrimination. What concerns me about today's meeting is when we're making decisions of this magnitude, this nature, it is important that we collect the necessary data. So I'm not sure who all of the testifiers are, but is there anyone here from the Board of Education, the Department of Education, etc.? No, that concerns me, because we are speaking about discrimination. Is there anyone from the Department of Personnel, the Division of Personnel? We speak to discrimination around this particular issue on a national level. But of course, what's important for us is we have to determine whether or not this is an issue that is permeating throughout the Virgin Islands community. This is a black community for the most part, and we may have instances where this happen in very small instances, but we must have data when we are making legislative decisions of this nature. Because as we are having this discussion, and I'm listening from outside of the chambers, the impression is that there is a permeating issue throughout the Virgin Islands community. So I'm not certain who to ask the question of. I think I saw, we have to have the appropriate individuals before us when we are having these discussions. Department of Education, they should have been bringing the data. The Board of Education, what is the board's policy? Do we have information around the Board of Education policy as it relates to this particular piece of legislation that's in front of us, what is the overall territories, the government of the Virgin Islands' policy? So I don't really have any questions to ask, because I feel that in order to properly, I'm not going to say that I'm in support or not in support of this legislation. This legislation needs to be properly vetted with the appropriate officials within this territory. The board is missing, the Department of Education is missing, and the Division of Personnel is missing. The courts is missing. They do hiring. We have semi-autonomous entities. We have to collect the information so we can make an informed decision. So I don't have a question. I am basically making a statement that if we are going to be making decisions on matters of this nature, it is critical and responsible of us as legislators to in fact bring the appropriate individuals before us so we can make a decision to vote a matter up or down. As it stands today, I cannot make a decision around this particular piece of legislation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank
Madam
you,
Chair,
thank you,
may-
Senate. Hold on. Thank you, Senator Donna Gregory. Thank you very much.
Point of information.
Okay. We have first off with point of information with Senator Francis Heyliger. Then I will proceed with yours, Senator Francis Heyliger. I did hear one of the testifiers. You did want to speak, but I will first have Senator Francis Heyliger provide a point of information. Okay.
Thank you so much. I do agree with quite a bit of what my colleague said in regards to having testifiers that have data and or adequate information. We did reach out to education and the board, but they informed us they would not be here today. We asked if they could send some kind of letter to put on the record. It didn't happen. As it relates to us here in the territory and collecting data, I wouldn't fall short of saying that's a joke, because at the end of the day, throughout this entire government, data is very important. But for some reason, we pass legislation after legislation lacking data. And no matter how much we sit here, we reach out for it, we ask for it, sometimes we will never see the light of day of it. But we still have to push forward as legislators and make the necessary decisions on behalf of the people we represent. Let's take, for example, the Civil Rights Commission. That would have been a great entity to collect this data. But do you know what? It's been defunct for years, because the people that have been in place in order to put people on these commissions, for some reason they neglect these different agencies and necessary boards in order to get the data, in order to do the people's work. So what should I and other colleagues do? Sit around and say, you know what? We're not getting the data we need, so we should not legislate. I can't subscribe to that. But I do agree that necessary information and data is very important, but if we cannot get it, we have to do what we have to do on behalf of the people of the territory. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Francis Heyliger. Senator Violet, you may proceed your point of inquiry.
Yeah, no, point of information.
Point of information.
The comments that I made first was just in reference to strengthening the bill when I said OSHA requirements with CTEC, and then that's for any type of texture here, could be for street here down to the feet that they have to put in a bond. So it was just in reference to how to strengthen the bill. I know I did have a concern where I said, well, it doesn't, the whereas having the employment and the enactment doesn't have an employment. And the sponsor said that that is why they amended Section 2. But Section 2 is amended by adding 2 definitions. And there are a couple definitions in Section 2. One is discrimination, one is place of public accommodation, resort, or amusement, and one is club. So they're adding on this definition here, which would be protective hairstyle. And then you go on to Section 3 is amended, and Section 3 is rights of persons and prohibition against discrimination. But what is added into Section 3 is a language that pertains only to education. That's why I was saying that I didn't see anything in reference to employment because of how it's worded. And I think that the one testifier clearly said that it was her belief that the public schools in the Virgin Islands, the private and parochial schools in the Virgin Islands were receiving public funds. And we know that is not the case. They are receiving federal funds. So I wouldn't recommend that you extend this particular measure to private and parochial schools. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Viale. Point of inquiry, Senator Joseph.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I also wanted to ask the bill sponsor if the bill sponsor had reached out to the EEOC, the Equal Opportunity Commission, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the Department of Labor, relative to instances where our residents in the Virgin Islands have been discriminated against, and incidentally also to the University of the Virgin Islands. It does mention it here in Section 3 relative to neither the board, a school district, college, university. We only have one university here. So those were my concerns. I just want to finally add that I had a really great conversation in my research on this with an assistant attorney general at the Department of Justice. And they indicated, which I don't really buy into, but for now it's almost like a Band-Aid relative to the Civil Rights Commission. I had asked the AG about that during the budget hearings, but they said that issues regarding discrimination are usually filled out to the respective department or agency. So if there's a discrimination with education, education deals with it. So those entities needed to be at the table for us to have a really good, robust deliberation to make a decision, an informed decision on this legislation, at least for me, to be able to have that level of information. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Joseph. Point of information, Senator Saru.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the Chair to Legal Counsel, is there in the code now, is there a precedence set or some ruling in our VI code that gives a broad, for lack of a better word, coverage, or is there like a broad clause that would encompass discrimination based on the basis of hair or textures?
Through the chair to Senator Saru, the statutes that we have right now are general and may cover this, what we have here. However, this is specific as to the particular endeavor that you want to prohibit, which is the hairstyle. So while you may have a general in the statutes, you don't have a specific one. So the answer that I can give you is that generally there is.
But there's not a shall, there's a may.
The word shall mandates that you do it. You don't have a choice. That should not be confused with the words may not. May not and shall are basically the same thing. Now, where you have may by itself, then you have an option.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Saru. Point of inquiry, Senator Potter.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to follow up again. I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but Ms. Asamora mentioned that on a national level or in her state, that the Crown Act is specifically limited to public and public charter schools. And I wanted to get her rationale as to what was the thought process in making the decision to limit it to that scope.
Thank you so much for the question, Senator. We are committed to ensuring not just that bills are introduced and passed, but that when enforced, that they could withstand scrutiny. And so because there was a concern that it may not be enforceable in private schools, we went ahead and moved forward with the language to include the workplace and in public charters. In my birth state of Connecticut, that member, Representative Robin Porter, she included public accommodations as well. So the concern was around the enforceability, not just ensuring that it was passed, but that should someone need the protections that are provided by the Crown Act, that protection would actually be there based on the way the bill is written. Does that answer the question, sir?
It does. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Point of inquiry, Senator Francis Heyliger.
Thank you. Through the chair to Ms. Asamoah, if there was a situation with amendment to specifically specify public locations, public schools, would that be more amenable to possibly alleviate some of the concerns of my colleagues that just by leaving it open as we continue on this journey to ultimately end discrimination in the entire territory? Because even though we have to potentially do what we have to do to get the bill passed, I still do not think it's a good thing when we have parochial schools and other places still discriminating against children because of their hairstyles.
Thank you so much for the question. I will speak specifically in terms of my experience, not as an expert in law in the U.S. Virgin Islands. The way we have used that language intentionally, again, just to reiterate that we want to ensure that the bill can withstand any scrutiny. So if you were to spell out in the workplaces and in educational settings as, defined as, public and public charters, I would suggest that that is consistent with what we've seen and then that would suffice. The reason, again, that the bill text has not specified private schools is because of what I've shared, the enforceability, and we don't want to have a bill passed that is not in turn enforceable. And the reason is because some of the parochial schools and some of the other private institutions can claim exemptions based on religion, which is a completely different class. If I may, Senator, just add a couple of points because I do have to jump, and I'm happy to answer any other questions and to have this conversation outside of this hearing with anyone who has additional conversations, as well as looping in the attorney who has conducted all of the legal research. I just want to note a couple of things. One, for the record, I submitted a memo with recommended changes from our attorney, William Sherman, and I know that you are working to remedy those, to remedy the inconsistencies between the way the bill was drafted and the way that we have introduced and passed it on the national level. Two, just because prohibition of certain hairstyles is not explicitly stated does not mean that the discrimination does not exist. Thirdly, I would respectfully urge anyone to remember that just because you have not personally experienced discrimination or you do not know someone who has experienced it, that does not mean that it doesn't exist. And then lastly, I'll just note, second to last, respectfully, as an applied behavior analyst and doctoral candidate, I have had to demonstrate mastery of both qualitative and quantitative research. I have great respect for both traditions. With that, I cannot fathom a reason why extending statutory protection against this form of discrimination would not be overwhelmingly supported if even one case of race-based hair discrimination is reported. There appears to be the thought that it must be widespread in order for it to be something that should be implemented. And I would argue that even if there is one case, then passing the Crown Act to extend statutory protection to anyone who is on the receiving end of this type of discrimination would be something that you all would consider supporting. And then I want to just note, as it relates to whether or not this has been, whether or not there's existing protection. There is this issue between immutable and mutable. This is what has happened in the courts. Mutable meaning it can change, and then immutable meaning it cannot. What our lawyers have determined is that the courts have said, well, if you can change your hair, then it's not discrimination, and that's not what we want, because even if I can, we should not have to. So in the absence of the Crown Act, our hair is not currently protected under the current classification of race. What this bill does explicitly is it amends the existing definition of race without defining race, because we know there's no biological basis for it. It is something that is assumptive. We assume race. This bill amends that definition of race to include those traits that are historically associated with it, thereby covering hair. In the absence of the Crown Act, it does not cover our hair, because our hair is something that is thought of as something that can change. And we are arguing that our hair is a racial characteristic, which is why we are using this very explicit language. Again, thank you so much for having me. I am happy to answer any questions after this. I just need to get home to my mom, and it's getting dark, so I wanted to make sure that I was here. I thank you all for having me, and I look forward to the ongoing conversation and ultimately ensuring that the bill is passed.
Thank you very much, Senator Francis Heyliger, and thank you, Ms. Asamoah. I just have one question, and I know Ms. Asamoah has to go at this time, but I'm going to ask our two. Well, if you could stay on, one of the main question that I have, and to ask to each one of you, just kind of go round robin, kind of go in a circle, is how do you feel that discrimination against one's hair affects societal growth in modern society? I know you have to leave, Ms. Asamoah. Just if you wanted to respond to that, and I would ask each one of the testifiers present to respond to that question.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. As I shared during my testimony, there's a fiscal impact, meaning economic, when you are told that your hair is unkempt or unprofessional. As I noted, people have been passed over for promotions. This has been widespread throughout the nation, acknowledging that this is a unique community and that it is predominantly Black, but that does not mean that it does not happen, that we do not do this to ourselves, that we are not reinforcing and perpetuating the same inequity that has been the cause of so much trauma for Black people. So one, there's the economic issue where, again, your upward mobility is impacted based off of your decision to wear your hair in a natural style or a protective style, which is, in alignment with your heritage, your racial identity. Two, I also noted that there's the psychological impact of being told that the way your hair grows out of your head is not okay. So between the psychological impact, the economic impact, and then lastly, the physical impact, because there's a 2019 NIH study that shows that chemical relaxers, the toxic chemicals that are in chemical relaxers, and I'm very mindful as a researcher not to say causal, but there is a correlation between those toxic chemicals and fibroids, those toxic chemicals and cancer, and those are things that people have done. They have utilized these harmful practices in order to fit into a society's concept of what's normal that is inconsistent with who we are. So I would argue that there are economic, psychological, as well as physical, by way of health, consequences as a result of hair discrimination.
Thank you. And move to Mr. and Mrs. Moorhead, if you wanted to respond to that question. How do you feel that hair discrimination affects, in this, as a close off to this, as we're closing out today's hearing, how do you feel that it impacts one's mindset?
I would start by saying, discrimination is discrimination. Racial discrimination is discrimination. So whether it's in a public setting, I don't want to send this part about the Department of Education or Board of Education, but this bill doesn't just touch on the government agency. This is this should cover the entire version of Discrimination is discrimination regardless of whether it's being done in a public school, on the street corner, in a workplace. It's discrimination. And racial discrimination should not be tolerated in the Virgin Islands. And I think, as Samoa said, even if it's one person, we are here because it happened to one person. So for the senators who are asking for data, the folks in front of you are the data. The letters that you received, that's the data. That shows that it should not be tolerated in the Virgin Islands. When you talk about the psychological impact, you have an 8-year-old kid who's smart, who's, in a group of 100 kids, he's one of 2 of the top students in his class, does not want to go to school, does not want to cut his hair. And you have other kids who are crying because you have to cut your hair to conform to European standards of what beauty is. When you have black people who look like you telling you, hey, you need to cut your hair. You cannot come in class. You cannot come to work is because the hair that God gave you. We live in a very religious community. The hair that God gave you is not acceptable. That psychologically messes with who you are. And I think this is an attempt to fix that.
Ms. Benjamin? Go ahead. Sure, go ahead.
May I just add that in forward-thinking communities, they are addressing hair discrimination. If you look at New York, for example, they've passed hair discrimination laws, but what you've seen is the parochial schools have all taken suit. They've updated their policies in New York so that they are not perpetrating hair discrimination. Even if someone mentioned that, is this applicable to the Virgin Islands? Even if you look at the Virgin Islands, Free Will Baptist Church has actually updated their uniform policies so that hair discrimination is no longer allowed. So I think that states in itself that it is a problem that we should address, and we would like your support to address it.
Yes, just to piggyback on my colleagues here, we're here talking about hair, but in essence, it's not just hair. It's confidence, it's self-esteem. These are direct correlations to depression, and we know what depression can affect. Someone's performance, someone upward mobility in the workforce. So it's hair, but we just need to look at it broader and say that it's not just hair. It's so much. Intellectually, it's so much interpersonally that your communication with others and how your reasoning for being in the community and being able to develop oneself and sort of be a good standing member of the community. So I thank you guys for having us here today. I agree in terms of having data, but let's just realize that there is no data because there is no standard of where we can measure this data in regards to this not, diversity, this not diversification in reference to hair and inequality. So I do think, I'm so happy that this conversation is happening. I think it's much needed. We see the shift of the world. We see where this trend where they're making others inclusive, ones with natural hair, and it's done for a reason. It's because the times we're in, and I commend you guys for putting forth this act together and wanted to take actions on it, because I do agree it's so much needed and it's all connected.
Thank you. Senator Saru, your point of inquiry?
Actually, a point of information and a point of inquiry. Okay. The point of information was to Ms. Asamoah, and I respect and I understand the sentiments. I just wanted to give you some, I think some of your remarks, it can be a bit out of context in a sense that the relevancy of the issue. Now, the bill is not a bill that's going to harm us, that we need to kill it or knock it down. But when you talk about race and all of that, the issue that the territories really face is a colonial issue. The fact that you have a 1901 insular case that continues to be upheld by the past 3 presidents on the Supreme Court that states that we are alien races to be governed by Anglo-Saxon principles. The issue remains that you have a delegate to Congress who stood on the floor of the Senate to defend the soul of the democracy when she couldn't even cast a vote in the very same hall. You know, so our issues are we do have racism and discrimination across the wall, but we have issues with the low MAP reimbursement, the consent decrees, the fact that our young men and women and elders have been drafted to war but can't vote for the commander-in-chief. So I just wanted to give you some historical context and not look at it as, you know, we're not understanding the issue of race. We have our issues here, but they're slightly different from a colonial standpoint. Now, the point of inquiry for me is there's a fine line between, and I want to know how you, in your advocacy, how it was addressed. There's a fine line between the standards for what is deemed acceptable or for appearance or what is a person that is, how do you define who is properly groomed and what is discrimination? So I may have a student who's a young man who decides to grow his hair, and his hair may be very distracting to me as a teacher. Not, in my opinion, it could be not well kept everywhere, but I just, again, distracted. It could be not well kept, and I may say, young man, step outside and get yourself together, but it can be perceived as I am discriminating because he didn't meet my standard of what is well kept. So, Ms. Asamoah, in your advocacy, how do you balance between Chigan? Okay, well, let me talk to somebody. Ms. Denise? Ms. Naturalista, in your advocacy, how do you balance, I guess the bill sponsor could also address it too, how do you balance between standards of grooming and what can be perceived as discrimination? Or I guess any of the testifiers?
So as we mentioned, this uniform policies have been passed throughout the country in schools. So it's very possible to enforce a uniform policy that allows for proper grooming to be put in place. So there's numerous examples that can be shared on how to make sure the wording is correctly so that someone does not feel like they're improperly calling out a student. I don't think that would be an issue at all.
But I think part of what's happening here too, Senator Cerullo, is that the standard of what is considered good in the Virgin Islands, we struggle with, because, you know, I've talked to Senator Gibbons about this, and there's that old man's, the mindset of what was done our parents and our grandparents is what you said. This is a effect of colonialism. So by using standards that were passed on by our grandparents and our parents and our great grandparents, they didn't have ill intention in saying, hey, you need to cut your hair. But the standard that they are providing, or that they've been pushing down, is a standard that was given to them by, you know, colonial masters hundreds of years ago. So this is a time when we have to change what we consider good here. You know, what do we consider the standard of beauty? It should not be left to someone to say, hey, you know, your braids are not up to my standards. You know, why is it up to your standards? That's like saying the shade of your skin color is not up to my standard.
And let me piggyback and say, what is kept, you know, what is groomed? Again, back to what Shamari is saying, what standards do we consider one hair is kept? Is it all hair should be neatly in place and combed and clean? So again, when we say kept and groomed, I think it's very vague in identifying one person and saying that, hey, we're being racist by saying that that person here is unkept or they're not groomed. So I think all standards should be applicable for anybody with hair. The same standards with one whose hair is relaxed, whose one hair is kept low, it pulled back in a bun. It should be across the board, whether you have natural hair, you have locks. It should be in that standard of defining what is kept, what is groomed, you know. So I do agree when you're saying it's a fine line, and you know, you as lawmakers have to be careful not to cross that line. But we need to identify what that line is as well.
And that was my question, Ms. Benjamin. How do we delineate between the two? So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Donna Fred Gregory. Point of inquiry. Oh, the committee stands for a brief 1-minute recess as we change the stenographer. Okay. The Committee on Education and Workforce Development stands in recess for 1 minute.
Love up pour like some every rain shower. I miss you even when it's only been an hour. You're all that I want to love from now until the Girl, you're all that I'm thinking of, but more than just
The Committee on Education and Workforce Development is now out of recess. Senator Donna Gregory, you have a point of inquiry?
Point of information.
A point of information?
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to reiterate my position on this particular piece of legislation. While I was sitting here, I took the opportunity to have a conversation, of course, with the sponsor of the legislation. And I also took the opportunity to do some research because I know it was nagging me that a few years ago, there was an issue in our public school system in the Island District of St. Croix where we had a student who, in fact, was discriminated against for his hair. And that happened somewhere around 2002. There was a issue with a young man. He was, I think, 12 years old, and he was sent home from the John H. Woodson Junior High School because of he was wearing his hair braided in crown rows. And as I sat here, I remember, I know that I was not at education at the time, but it became a big issue because his father, I think, eventually came to work for the department, I think. But I think there was a lawyer involved. I think the lawyer was Attorney Leron was involved in this particular case. I know that the outcome had to have been that the student was able to return to school. But my perspective or my position in this remains that because we were able to find this article from the source with this situation that occurred in our school system, it is important to have the discussion with the Department of Education, the Board of Education, etc., around this piece of legislation, because we need to make a determination as to, because this was a policy that was in that particular school. It wasn't necessarily a broad overarching policy at VIDE, at the Department of Education. So there must be that conversation to find out exactly, do schools have their own policies? And the answer is yes. And, as a result of this particular piece of legislation, this situation that occurred in 2002 at Woodson Junior High School, did the Department of Education and the Board of Education come together to address the policy? So this requires more information and proper vetting. We are in no hurry to move this forward, and my strong recommendation is that we get the information from the appropriate, we have the testifiers of these, have the officials rather, from these respective entities come before the Senate to testify on this matter. So we can know exactly what has occurred since then. In addition to the Department of Labor, the Commissioner of Labor also needs to have a seat at the table for this discussion. This is an overarching piece of legislation, and the right people need to be at the table. We cannot make these decisions, based on our vibe and our feelings. We have to understand what we're doing and why we're doing what we're doing. Thank you for the time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Senator Fred Gregory. Do I hear any motions?
Point of information.
Oh, before. Okay.
There's a motion.
The Committee on Education and Workforce Development stands in recess for 5 minutes. The Committee on Education and Workforce Development is now back out of recess. Do I hear a motion? Motion, Senator Joseph. You're recognized for your motion.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I move that Bill number 34-0147, an act amending the Virgin Islands Code, Title 10, Chapter 1, Section 2 and 3, relating to discrimination on account of race, to include discrimination on the basis of hair texture, and Title 17, Chapter 3, relating to education, to enact the Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair Act, or the Virgin Islands Crown Act of 2021, be held in committee at the call of the chair. I so move.
Do I hear a second?
Donna, you want to second it?
The motion has been properly moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, roll call. Roll call on Bill number 34-0147.
Roll call. Senator Donna Fred Gregory.
Yes, Senator Fred Gregory.
Yes. Senator Kenneth Gittens. Absent. Senator Carla Joseph.
Yes.
Yay. Senator Milton Potter. Nay. Senator Janelle Saru? Nay. Senator Kurt Viale?
No.
Nay. Senator Genevieve Whitaker?
Nay.
Senator Genevieve Whitaker, nay. Senator Alma Heyliger? Sorry. We have 3 yeas, 3 nays, 1 absent. I'll read it again. Senator Donna Fred Gregory, yay. Senator Carla Joseph, yay. Senator Milton Potter, nay. Senator Janelle Saru, nay. Senator Kurt Viale, nay. Senator Genevieve Whitaker, nay. 4 nays, 3 yays.
4 and 2.
4 nays and 2 yays.
1 absent. Yep.
Testing, testing. Okay. Motion fails. Motion, do I hear another motion? Oh. Do I hear another motion? Please recognize Senator Saru's mic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that Amendment 34-392 and Amendment to Bill number 34-0147 on behalf of the bill sponsor, Alma Francis Heyliger. Bill number 34-0147 is amended as follows. Section A2, subsection A is amended by 1, striking the definition for protective hairstyle and inserting a new definition that reads as follows. Protective hairstyle means hair characteristics, hair texture, and hairstyles that include but are not limited to such hairstyles as braids, locks, twists, cornrows, bantu knots, afros, and other styles in which the hair is tightly coiled or tightly curled. 2, the definition of race is striking and a new definition is inserted to read as follows. Race includes traits historically associated with race, including but not limited to hair texture, hair type, and protective hairstyles. B, Section 2, subsection B, is amended on page 3, line 13 by striking including the individual's hair texture or protective hairstyle. C, Section 3, subsection A, by striking neither the Board of Education and inserting the Virgin Islands Department of Education, Virgin Islands Board of Education. D, Section 3, subsection B is stricken and a new subsection B is inserted to read as follows. B, for purposes of this section, the term protective hairstyle includes but is not limited to such hairstyles as braids, locks, twists, cornrows, bantu knots, afros, and other hairstyles, and other styles in which the hair is tightly coiled or tightly curled. E, Bill number 34-0147 is further amended as follows. 1, in section 2, subsection H, by striking creed, color, or national origin. 2, in the short title 2021 is stricken, and 3, in section 3, internal section 25, not is inserted after administrator may. I so move.
The motion has been properly moved. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Senators Potter and Violet. Madam Clerk, roll call. Any objections? Hearing none. Madam Clerk.
Roll call. Senator.
So ordered. Okay. Okay. Motion on.
Motion, Madam Chair.
Yes. Motion. You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that Bill number 34-0147, as amended, an act amending the Virgin Islands Code, Title 10, Chapter 1, Sections 2 and 3, relating to discrimination on account of race to include discrimination on the basis of hair texture, and Title 17, Chapter 3, relating to education to enact the Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair Act of the Virgin Islands Crown Act of 2021 be approved by this committee and forwarded to the Committee on Rules and Judiciary for further consideration. I so move.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Senator Violet and objected to. Madam Roll Call. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Roll call. Senator Donna Fred Gregory. Nay. Senator Kenneth Giddens. Absent. Senator Carla Joseph. Nay. Senator Milton Potter. Yes. Yay. Senator Janelle Saru. Yay. Senator Kurt Violet.
Yes.
Yay. Senator Genevieve Whitaker.
Yay.
Yay. I have 4 yeas and 2 nays.
Madam Chair, the count must be 7. The total.
Correction, 5 yeas, 1 nay.
And 1 absent.
Repeating count. Senator Donna Fred Gregory. Nay. Senator Kenneth Giddens, absent. Senator Carla Joseph. Nay. Senator Milton Potter. Yay. Senator Janelle Saru. Yay. Senator Kurt Violet. Yay.
Yes, yes.
Senator Genevieve
Yes.
Whitaker. Yay. 4 yeas and 2 nays. One absent, 2 nays, and 4 yeas.
Motion carries. Bill number 34-0147 has been approved by this committee and will be forwarded to the Rules Committee as amended.
I can read the bill.
Bill number 34-0147, an act amending Title 10, Chapter 1, Sections 2 and 3 relating to discrimination on the account of race to include discrimination on the basis of hair texture, and Title 17, Chapter 3 relating to education to enact the Creating a Respectful and World for Natural Hair Act, or the Crown Act of 2021, as amended, has been approved by this committee and will be properly forwarded to the Rules Committee. Point of personal privilege, Senator Fred Gregory.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make myself abundantly clear that this committee, based on the bill that just passed this committee, I voted no because my position is that the bill needed to be properly vetted with the Education Committee, the Department of Labor, the Department of Education, the Board of Education, the Attorney General's office. And I could go on and on. We're not here. There were no government officials here. We know that the only issue is not tied to government. However, government officials should have an opportunity to vet this, to have a discussion with us around this legislation prior to moving it forward. So at the appropriate time, I would vote my conscience. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time.
Thank you. Point of personal privilege, Senator Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, as a member of the Rules Committee, I know that typically bills are vetted in the committee that it is initially assigned. This is a impacting bill. It should have the proper testimony be received in this committee of jurisdiction before it goes through the Rules Committee, which is a way committee, and not wait until that time to have those individuals come before the Rules Committee to testify. I also want to place on the record that the Equal Opportunity Employer Commission, the EEOC, I only know the acronym, needs to be here as well. They are not here. The university needs to be here. It mentions the University of the Virgin Islands in this legislation. They should have been at the table here. And so they were not. And so that is why I voted in the negative. And I would have liked to see some employers here as well, from the private sector, as well as the Chamber of Commerce. All of those entities should be able to give us a great perspective relative to the impact, the full impact of this piece of legislation. So, Madam Chair, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you, Senator Joseph. Senator Francis Heyliger, point of personal privilege.
Thank you. First, I want to thank my colleagues for moving this piece of legislation forward to rules. It is a very important piece of legislation, and once in rules, I have taken to all the ideas and potential amendments that we will be putting forward, and all the suggestions that were made here today. Some of these individuals we did attempt to invite, but they could not make it. So we will do that in the Rules Committee, and I will guarantee, from my perspective, I will continue to fight for this piece of legislation because discrimination has no place, whether in the U.S. or here in this territory, as it relates to our hair. That is a God-given attribute. Thank you so much for the support.
Thank you. And hearing no other other requests, this committee stands in recess for 5 minutes, and then we'll proceed with block number 2. The Committee on Education and Workforce Development stands in recess for let me just look at the time. I'll make that just 15 minutes. We're going to stand in recess for about 15 minutes. We may come before that time, but I just want to make sure to respect to the public's time as well. So the Committee on Education and Workforce Development stands in recess for 15 minutes.
G6 Production.
The Committee on Education and Workforce Development is back on the record. Madam Clerk, can you read the correspondence into the record, please?
Certainly. November 3rd, 2021, sent via email to Senator Whitaker, Honorable Senator Genevieve Whitaker, Chairwoman, Committee on Education and Workforce Development. Dear Senator Whitaker, I am in receipt of your invitation to testify on Tuesday, November 9th, 2021, before the Committee on Education and Workforce Development. As previously indicated, the VI Department of Education is unable to participate in the hearing, as the department's leadership is scheduled to attend other work-related activities outside of the territory. Please consider one of my past requests to conduct the hearing on December 23rd, 28th, or 29th, or align our calendars to meet after Governor Bryan's 2022 State of the Territory address. We would appreciate your consideration as the department is engaged in time-sensitive work with internal and external stakeholders that must be completed before employees go home for the Christmas holiday. Attending to this work is critical to avoid lapsing funds and remedying setbacks that result from COVID-19. As is the department's custom, we continue to provide regular updates to the community. Our next update is scheduled for Monday, November 8th, 2021, in the form of a press conference detailing the return to in-person learning for students in grades 4 through 12. Please see attached flyer. I am appreciative of our ongoing collaboration in the best interest of the Virgin Islands students. Should you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at raquel.berry@vide.vi. Respectfully, Raquel Berry Benjamin, Commissioner.
Thank you.
End of letter.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do you have any other correspondence to be read?
Yes, I have one more.
You may proceed.
Also from Virgin Islands Board of Education, dated November 19th, 2021. Dear Chairwoman Whitaker, on behalf of Chairman Kaisa A. Callwood, the VI Board of Education will not be able to testify at the Committee on Education and Workforce Development's upcoming hearing. In addition to our previously mentioned competing demands that require our immediate attention prior to the upcoming holidays, members of the board will be participating in school tours. Last month, the VIBE, through its School Plants and Facilities Committee, proposed the soft opening plan to the Department of Education Department to return all public school students and staff to in-person learning. The school tours are being conducted as part of the VIBE's continued efforts to support the department. In addition to ongoing discussions with the department relative to health and safety, maintenance, and risk management protocols, we are also discussing its plans to address scheduling, transportation, online learning, and technology criteria and protocols, staffing, and board policies that should be included in the department's written school reopening plan. As such, please consider conducting the hearing on November 29th or 30th, 2021, or the first week of December 2021. This will allow the VIBE time to review the information received from the school tours and discuss its findings. Thank you for your understanding and continued support. Sincerely, Stephanie J. Berry, Executive Director. End of letter.
Do you have this? You may proceed, Madam Clerk.
I have one more letter.
Yeah, okay.
September 18th, 2021. Dear Senator Whitaker, I am in receipt of your invitation to provide testimony on Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021, before the Committee on Education and Workforce Development in Block 2 on the plans for the 2022 school reopening. As previously indicated in my November 3rd, 2021 follow-up letter regarding your former invitation to testify on Tuesday, November 9th, 2021, before the Committee on Education and Workforce Development, the VI Department of Education has a full schedule during the month of November and December 2021. Regrettably, the department is unable to participate in the hearing Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021, as we will be engaged in previously scheduled meetings as well as conducting school assessment walkthroughs with the VI Board of Education at schools that are preparing to welcome students on January 10th, 2022. In January, it does not, if January does not work for you, In the spirit of collaboration, I humbly ask that you consider one of the December dates below that were previously proposed, December 23rd, 28th, or 29th. I am appreciative of our ongoing collaboration in the best interest of the Virgin Islands students. My office will make contact to schedule a brief meeting by phone. Should you have any questions before then, please feel free to contact me at my email or phone number. Sincerely, Raquel Berry Benjamin, Commissioner. End of letter.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Does that conclude the correspondence?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Is there a motion at this time?
Mic check. I move to subpoena Commissioner Raquel Berry Benjamin, Superintendent for the St. Croix District Carlos McGregor, Superintendent for the St. Thomas District Dr. Stephen Jurgen, Chief Operating Officer Dr. Dion Wells Hendrington, Maintenance Directors Joseph Sibley for the St. Thomas St. John District, Davidson Charlemagne for the St. Croix District, to appear before this Committee on Education and Workforce Development on December 14th at 10 a.m. virtually via Microsoft Teams. The hearing to be held at the Fritz Loetz Conference Room to discuss all matters relating to the 2022 in-person school reopening. I so move.
Motion properly made by Senator Whitaker and seconded by Senators Joseph and Fred Gregory. Roll call.
Roll call. Senator Donna Fred Gregory. Yay. Senator Kenneth Gittens, absent. Senator Carla Joseph. Yay. Senator Milton Potter. Yay. Senator Janelle Saru. Yay. Senator Kurt Vialet.
Yes.
Yay. Senator Genevieve Whitaker.
Yay.
Yay. We have 6 yays, 1 absent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The Committee on Education and Workforce Development has moved to subpoena Commissioner Raquel Berry Benjamin, Superintendent Dr. Stefan Jurgen, Mr. Carlos McGregor, Chief Operating Officer Dion Wells Hendrington, Maintenance Supervisors Mr. Joseph Sibley and Davidson Charlemagne to appear before the Committee on Education and Workforce Development on December 14th at 10 a.m. at the Fritz E. Loetz Conference Room to discuss all matters related to the 2022 in-person school reopening. The committee will stand in a brief recess.
The Committee on Education and Workforce Development is now back out of recess. And that, before we conclude, I just wanted to, just for the public's purpose especially, myself and the Vice Chair have been at it for a number of weeks in really trying to get particularly the Department of Education before this committee as it pertains to the 2022 school reopening. It was through, efforts, emails, constant, and this is not the first hearing that we were trying to actually get them to come before the committee. And the other thing we're also asking for, we're asking for the plan. What is the actual plan? If school is set to reopen January 10th, the longer we take to get information, that us as a body, community members of the community, we're faced with, we're put up again in a situation where there's a lot of lack of information and support and understanding. Throughout this country, and even just as an example for another territory, a good example is even one I can call is Guam, as you look on to all the different areas where who have provided their school reopening plans. And so that's my whole point too. Between the Board of Education and also the Department of Education that goes on these different trips. In fact, there was a trip as to why they weren't able to appear sooner. We would assume that they would have, information and be putting things in writing. So we are going to proceed having to subpoena these individuals to ensure that we, in fact, have them before this committee. So if, at this time, hearing no requests, the Committee on Education and Workforce Development is now, this is concluded, and this hearing is now adjourned. Again, I want to also thank, at this time, thank my staff, thank everyone gathered here today, the central staff for today, and thank you for those who are listening. The Committee on Education and Workforce Development is now adjourned.